Not long after his first love went abroad, Alex confessed to me, "My friends teased. After all this time, the most suitable person has always been by your side." He said nothing. I cautiously stayed by his side, thinking that sincerity would be reciprocated, until he missed my birthday party to pick up his first love from the airport. A friend asked him, "If you chose Lisa, why can't you let go of Zoe?" He replied, "A is always A, but B can be anyone." I finally understood that it was time for me to leave. Chapter 01. After being together for 3 years, Alex finally made our relationship public on his social media. For my 22nd birthday, he invited all his friends, saying he was going to throw me a grand party. I was touched, thinking that my sincerity had finally been rewarded, but I didn't expect him to suddenly be absent that day. At 7 in the evening, everyone had already arrived at the villa, yet Alex was still nowhere to be seen. A group of people surrounded me, asking with some impatience, "Lisa, where's Alex?" I clutched my phone tightly, stammering, he had an urgent matter and couldn't make it. In fact, I hadn't been able to reach him for the past hour. But Alex has already arranged everything. Just enjoy the food and have fun. Though I knew that very few of them were sincerely there to celebrate my birthday, I still tried my best to maintain my composure, smiling and greeting everyone present. Suddenly, someone in the crowd scoffed, acting like the hostess. Then someone else laughed loudly. I was wondering what was so important for Alex. Turns out he went to the airport to pick up Zoe. Upon hearing that, I froze for a moment, and the wine glass in my hand slipped and shattered on the floor. The woman who spoke was Oriana, a friend of Zoe's. As soon as she spoke, she drew everyone's attention. She waved her phone proudly. "Zoe just messaged me. She's back in the country for a vacation." I squatted down to clean up the shattered pieces of glass, accidentally cutting my finger. Oriana walked over, swaying her hips, and looked down at me condescendingly. "Oh, the main character's back. Some people must be frantic." Well, it's no wonder. Everyone knows how passionately Alex pursued Zoe back in high school. I hung my head without saying anything. I knew all too well how much Alex used to love Zoe. After all, I had been silently watching him from behind since I was 12. Seeing that I wasn't responding, Oriana lost interest and said, "This meal doesn't suit my taste, so I'll be leaving." After speaking, she headed straight for the door. As if she suddenly remembered something, Oriana paused and turned back, smiling. "Oh, I almost forgot to tell everyone, tomorrow, Alex is throwing a welcome back party for Zoe. The location is Rose Manor." She deliberately raised her voice, emphasizing the last 2 words. That was the estate Alex personally designed when he was 18, built exclusively for Zoe, filled with her favorite red roses. But shortly after the college entrance exams, Zoe went abroad. The manor was locked up by Alex, and no one was allowed to set foot there. The villa we're in now was something Alex rented temporarily to celebrate my birthday. It's May, and the roses on the garden wall are in full bloom. Oriana plucked one, tossed it to the ground, and stomped it into the dirt with her high heel. She then said, with a pointed look, "Climbing roses are weak and reliant, growing by entwining others. Naturally no match for the proudly standing rose." A round of laughter echoed around me. I followed her to the door, still keeping a smile on my face. "I'm sorry for not hosting well today. Have a safe journey, sister." Oriana curled her lip in dissatisfaction. Low class can never be presentable. After witnessing the scene, everyone else soon left as well. Chapter 02. I watched the crowd disperse, and all the strength drained from my body, almost causing me to collapse on the floor. A pair of hands caught me just in time. The man frowned slightly, his face showing concern. I turned and saw Sam, forcing a smile. "You haven't left yet?" He scratched his head, his gaze flickering. "I got a call earlier. Alex said he had something urgent and asked me to help host everyone for you. But somehow, everyone left in an instant. We've known each other for over 10 years, and he's not good at lying." I could see right through him. I gave a bitter smile. "You don't need to hide it from me. I know he went to see Zoe." Sam's face showed embarrassment, and he awkwardly explained, "Alex isn't someone without boundaries. He must have a reason. Don't overthink it. He then tried to comfort me. You two grew up together. Those years of companionship can't be compared to just anyone. My heart felt sour. Among Alex's friends, Sam was probably the only one who believed that. After all, Alex and I were people from different worlds. When I was 10, my father left my mother and me, taking another woman with him. My mother left me at the orphanage entrance and left by herself. Because of my introverted personality and timidity, I was always bullied by the other children. Alex's family was passionate about charity work. One day, Alex's parents brought him to the orphanage for charity, and all the children flocked to get gifts. I was sitting alone in the corner, crying, because someone had cut my hair. The director said I was antisocial and had trouble making friends. Alex came over, stuffed a handful of candies into my palm, and smiled. Here's some candy for you. Please don't cry, okay? Since then, Alex often came to find me, sometimes bringing his best friend Sam along. Our relationship grew closer and closer. Later, Alex's family decided to sponsor me, and they took me into their home. From the age of 12 to 17, I was always by Alex's side. Some people at school mocked me, calling me his personal maid. Alex kicked over their desk without hesitation, his face cold as he warned, "Lisa is my sister. Stop talking nonsense, or I'll beat you every time I see you." I was very happy that he defended me, but deep down, I also felt a hint of sadness. In the second year of high school, Zoe transferred to our school. She was a beautiful girl, like a princess from a fairy tale. The boys pursued her fiercely, but Alex remained unmoved. Sam teased him, saying he was too picky. He raised his eyebrows and said lightly, "With Lisa around, how could I be interested in other girls?" Even though I knew it was a joke, I could clearly hear my heart skip a beat. On the first evening of the new semester in our second year, he came to the classroom to find me, sitting beside me with a mysterious look in his eyes. "I have something important to tell you." His serious gaze made me nervous, and I asked, "What is it?" He leaned close and whispered in my ear, "I'm going to pursue Zoe." I turned my head to look at him in disbelief. His eyes were filled with light, so bright, but they couldn't reflect my figure. He excitedly told me about his accidental encounter with her during the winter vacation and how he gradually fell for her. I sat there motionless, my eyes glued to the English vocabulary book on the desk. I was terrified that if I spoke another word to him, the sadness I felt would burst out uncontrollably. Finally, he asked me, "Lisa, you're in the same class as Zoe. You'll help me, right?" I heard myself respond with a very soft mem. He glanced at his beloved, who was surrounded by admirers, and walked away contentedly. That entire evening, I didn't turn a single new page in my vocabulary book. Abandon, the first word on the first line of the first page. I repeated it countless times. It turned out that my love for him had already grown uncontrollably like weeds. Chapter 03. I hid my feelings well, dutifully passing on his love letters, delivering gifts, and conveying messages. Alex's dream was to become an architectural designer, and his first project was the manor he designed for Zoe. She liked red roses, and he personally planted an entire garden of them for her. In June, when the roses were in full bloom, he confessed his feelings to his princess with all his sincerity, only to be rejected. Zoe said her heart already belonged to someone else, and she would soon be going abroad to join him. That night, Alex sat in the rose garden drinking all night, drunk to the point of losing consciousness. I took care of him the whole night and saw him cry for the first time. He really did seem deeply in love with that girl. How similar we were, both loving someone we could never have. Later, we got into the same university, and he never mentioned Zoe again. On Valentine's Day, he suddenly confessed to me, "Lisa, do you want to try being with me?" I looked at Zoe's post on social media, photos of her holding hands and kissing her boyfriend. My heart ached dully, but I still nodded and said, "Okay." Now that I think about it, that confession was far from romantic. But back then, my heart and mind were full of him, and even if the path ahead was an abyss, I was willing to fall into it with him. We only told Sam about us. He teased, "After all this time, the right person has always been by your side." Alex didn't say anything. I knew he still needed time, but I was willing to wait. Throughout our 4 years at university, I stayed by his side cautiously, giving him all my care and effort. He also slowly started to care about me in return. On our 3rd anniversary, he posted a picture of us on social media. We were holding hands, so much like a genuinely loving couple. I thought I had finally entered his heart, but it turned out to be nothing more than an illusion. That night, Alex didn't come home. The next morning, when I arrived at the university, there was a crowd gathered at the gate. As soon as they saw me, someone approached me, saying mysteriously, "Lisa, someone is looking for you." I pushed through the crowd, only to see a stranger standing next to a Harley-Davidson motorcycle, an attractive person with an air of confidence. Her long hair cascaded over her shoulders, giving her an appearance that was beautiful yet ambiguous. She raised her eyes to glance at me, smiling gently, her demeanor both lazy and alluring, enough to make anyone's heart beat faster for no reason. "Are you Lisa?" she asked. "I came specifically to find you." I looked at her suspiciously and asked, "What do you want?" She walked over, her presence exuding a violet fragrance, unique and captivating. "My name is Elena, and I'm a fashion designer. I'd like you to model for me." She explained that she had seen my photo at a friend's place and thought that my looks and demeanor perfectly fit her new collection, which was why she flew all the way from England to find me. I felt flattered, but my long-standing lack of self-confidence made me instinctively want to back away. However, Elena seemed very sure. I trust my own judgment. Seeing my hesitation, she left her contact information and told me to think it over. We arranged to have an answer in 3 days. And then she swung her leg over the motorcycle, riding off with a grace like the wind. At that time, I had no idea that meeting her would bring such tremendous changes to my life. Chapter 04. The next time I saw Alex was the day after Zoe's welcome back party. I was carrying my laptop, intending to go to the library to work on my graduation thesis, and ran into him just as I stepped out of the dormitory building. The moment our eyes met, both of us were a bit awkward. What a coincidence. I greeted him stiffly. Alex lit a cigarette, took a deep drag, and frowned. "I was actually waiting for you here." He hadn't smoked in a long time. The last time was after his confession to Zoe had failed. I lowered my gaze. "You could have just called me." He paused for a moment and then asked, "Are you free? Want to grab a bite to eat?" I nodded. "Okay." We didn't speak at all along the way. The atmosphere as awkward as if we were two strangers meeting for the first time. Alex finally broke the silence. "I'm sorry I missed your birthday." I hadn't expected him to bring it up, and for a moment I didn't know how to react. But before I could gather my thoughts, I heard myself say calmly, "It's okay." Alex smiled lightly. I felt frustrated with myself. No matter what he did, as long as he gave me any sign of goodwill, I would forgive him so easily. I hated myself for loving him so deeply, unable to do anything about it. Alex drove us to the restaurant where he had confessed to me. The waiter brought a delicate cake and a bouquet of roses. He carefully cut a piece of cake and placed it in front of me, apologetically saying, "It was wrong of me to leave suddenly that day. I'm making it up to you today." I had no resolve in front of him. Knowing I held a place in his heart was enough to make me smile. But this has nothing to do with Zoe. At the mention of her name, my smile froze on my face. He continued, "Lisa, I hope you'll decline Elena's invitation." I didn't understand what connection these two things had, nor how he knew about Elena. I just looked up at him, stunned. Why? That opportunity was originally meant for Zoe. I heard him say, "Alex told me that Elena saw the 3-year anniversary picture he had posted on Zoe's phone, which was how she found me. That fashion exhibition was specifically for newcomers in the fashion industry, and whoever won the gold award would get support to establish their own brand. Elena was the favorite to win, and being her partner would bring countless benefits." "So, she asked you to come?" I asked. Alex quickly explained, "Of course not. She's just too kind. Even though she's sad, she still asked me to congratulate you on her behalf." I said nothing. He was still the same as before. Once he started talking about Zoe, he just wouldn't stop. "Actually, she wanted to be a model, and I have 100 ways to help her. But she's stubborn and doesn't like relying on others. Though his words were blaming, his eyes were shining with admiration. I lowered my head and scooped a bite of cake into my mouth. But it only tasted sickeningly sweet. Won't she be upset if you do this? I asked. He smiled confidently. As long as she doesn't know. When you refuse, Elena, just find a suitable reason and don't give yourself away. I looked at him, feeling a deep sorrow within. But doing this makes me unhappy. Alex paused, looking stunned. You usually hesitate to even speak on stage. So why would you be interested in something like a fashion show? Awkwardly, I said, I want to give it a try. I wanted to know if I really was as good as Elena had said. Alex lost his patience, and his tone turned cold. Lisa, I'm not discussing this with you. Look at yourself. What part of you is comparable to Zoe? Why do you have to overestimate yourself and compete with her? All the pent-up grievances burst out in an instant. Tears filled my eyes as I said, all you care about is Zoe. But I'm your girlfriend now. Alex wouldn't look at me and said softly, she's different. What's different about her? I asked. He frowned, his gaze flickering. Do I have to make it that obvious? My heart shattered into pieces, and I questioned him regardless of anything else. You like her. So why are you asking me to make sacrifices for her? Alex got angry, blurting out without thinking, because everything you have comes from my family. He was stunned by his own words after they left his mouth. I bowed my head low, biting my lips to keep myself from crying aloud. I understand. The air around us was eerily still, perhaps realizing he had said something hurtful. He tried to explain softly. I didn't mean to look down on you. I kept my head down, saying nothing. He grew increasingly annoyed, stood up, and said, take your time with the food. I'm leaving. He left without looking back. I collapsed, and the tears broke free. Chapter 05. I refused Elena, giving her the excuse that with graduation approaching, I truly didn't have the time. She didn't push me and simply said, that was my oversight. Let's work together next time. And then she flew back to the UK. Alex didn't break up with me, but he also didn't contact me anymore. The photo of us that he had posted on his social media was gone, replaced by a landscape photo, a garden full of red roses, burning to the eye. And just like that, we ended without even saying goodbye, carelessly, just like the confession that had started it all. At the graduation ceremony, I went to find Sam to get something, and accidentally overheard their conversation. Sam asked Alex, since you chose Lisa, why can't you forget Zoe? He replied, A will always be a, but B can be anyone. Sam frowned and asked, what are you planning to do now? He pursed his lips and said earnestly, Zoe is single now. I want to pursue her. Sam sighed and said, Lisa has liked you for over 10 years. Don't regret it later. Alex answered with certainty, I won't. Turns out, all those years of chaos in my heart, he knew about it all along. Someone who doesn't love you won't be moved, no matter how much you give. I think it's really time for me to leave. After graduation, I declined the job Alex's family had arranged for me and moved to another city to live. For more than 10 years, my life revolved around Alex, and suddenly losing that direction, I spent a long time living like a shell of myself. The first New Year's Eve, I spent it alone in a rental apartment. Scrolling through social media, I saw a photo Oriana posted, a group picture of her, Sam, Zoe, and Alex. I stared at their faces for a long time. They all looked so happy. I opened my camera to take a selfie, pretending that I was happy too. As I smiled, tears uncontrollably fell. I wanted to find someone to talk to. I opened my university friend Roma's chat. The last message was from 2 hours ago. She had excitedly told me, Lisa, Hudson and I are getting married. I replied, congratulations. Quietly closing the chat, an unexpected message suddenly popped up. Elena, Happy New Year. I was surprised she even remembered me, wiped my tears, and replied, Happy New Year. How have you been lately? I thought for a moment and replied, nothing too good, nothing too bad. You? And so we started casually chatting. She didn't win the gold award at that fashion show because she withdrew at the last minute. I was a bit upset and asked, why? She said, Because I wanted my favorite creation to be worn by the person it suits best. Feeling guilty, I asked, "Did you not find the right person afterward?" She replied, "No one but you." I called her stubborn, but in my heart, I felt a strange warmth, maybe because I had never been chosen so firmly by anyone before. At midnight, fireworks began outside. The brilliant light flickered, igniting thousands of other lights. I heard the cheers of children from upstairs, and the quiet night suddenly turned lively. Excited, I took a photo and sent it to Elena. "Look at the fireworks. So beautiful." She immediately called me, squinting her eyes and smiling enchantingly. "I see them. The same sky, the same scenery." Turns out, we were in the same city at that moment. Chapter 06. Elena told me that she came to this city at the invitation of a friend, to work as a consultant for her own clothing brand. She was also using the studio to prepare for the fashion show in May. Once again, she asked me to be her model. This time, I gladly agreed. Our relationship quickly grew close. When my college friend Roma got married, Elena took me to pick out a dress and get a new hairstyle. I looked at my transformed reflection in the mirror, amazed at her ability to create magic from the mundane. She tapped my head, saying, "Have some confidence. You were always beautiful." I always drew energy from Elena, making me feel as if I had finally recovered from that failed love. On Valentine's Day in February, Roma married her high school sweetheart Hudson. They were poor, so poor that Roma's wedding dress was just a simple white gown that cost 200 yuan. Hudson felt guilty and sad about it, so I asked Elena for help. She suggested embellishing the dress with embroidery. Hudson personally designed the pattern and stitched it bit by bit. He even learned how to make a veil. I watched this man, who was clumsy but determined, learn needlework for the sake of his beloved, and I thought, this must be what real love looks like. At the wedding, Roma wore that dress, and she was the most beautiful bride in the world. When Hudson lifted her veil and saw her face, he smiled as tears fell. I couldn't help but think of Alex. I had once imagined countless times walking into a wedding ceremony with him. I opened his social media, only to see that he had just posted a new photo. Zoe was holding a bouquet of red roses, and Alex was holding her waist, looking at her with tender eyes. The caption read, "No one but you is meant to grow old with me." In the small chapel, the bride and groom spoke vows of never parting, and the air was filled with the sweetness of love. The crowd chanted, "Kiss! Kiss!" Suddenly, I laughed loudly, joining in the cheering and celebration. Elena stood silently beside me. After the reception ended, she suddenly asked, "Want to go for a ride?" I nodded silently. She put a helmet on me. "Warning, the wind will be loud later, so I might not hear you. If you need anything, just tap my shoulder." Then she revved the engine, taking me across the city, slicing through the wind, from one end of the city to the other. I sat on the back of Elena's motorcycle, crying my heart out. That desperate and humble love finally ended for good that day. That night, Elena stayed with me as I drank a lot of alcohol. For the first time, I told her about my story with Alex. She listened quietly. I asked her, with swollen eyes, "Why doesn't he like me? Am I really that bad?" While handing me a tissue, she explained, "It's not that you're not good enough. You just haven't met the right person yet. The one who truly appreciates you will find your flaws insignificant and will magnify your strengths. Even if you are buried in the ground, they will be able to see at first glance that you are a sparkling gem." I bowed my head, discouraged. Will I really meet someone like that? She smiled softly. "First, love yourself well. Just be ready." She then raised the beer can in her hand to clink against mine. Teasing, "But haven't you already met that person?" She pointed to herself. "Someone who appreciates you." I looked into her eyes. There was a kind of magic hidden in those dark pupils, captivating me easily. Many years later, I would still think of this night, over and over. It gave me infinite courage to face this imperfect world. It turns out that someone who stays with you till death doesn't always have to be romantic love. Chapter 07. Elena's world was strange and colorful. I found myself gradually falling for it, and a crazy idea quietly emerged in my mind. To prepare for the upcoming fashion show, I started dieting, exercising, and practicing my runway walk, giving it my all. Sometimes, I would imagine myself walking down the runway, drawing amazed glances from all around. Then the host would announce the designer's name, and applause would surge like a wave. It was an exhilarating experience that I had never felt before. One that was so beautiful it felt as though I was floating in the air. But I never expected to run into Zoe that day at the show. We were assigned to the same dressing room. She was the opening model, wearing a red silk gown, stunning like a blooming red rose. The moment she stepped on stage, the applause was thunderous, breathtaking. When she returned backstage, an assistant handed her a bouquet of roses, whispering, "From Mr. Alex." Zoe picked a rose and toyed with it, turning her head to look at me as I was doing my makeup. "I heard you've been with Alex for 3 years, but he's never given you roses, always sweetbriar flowers." I remained silent. She continued, "Sweetbriar and roses look alike, but they are worlds apart. Only someone with a poor eye would mistake them." I looked at myself in the mirror and unconsciously lowered my head. "Chin up." Elena's voice sounded in my ear. She placed a rose wreath on my head, raising her brows as she smiled. "It suits you well." I looked at her gentle yet determined gaze, took a deep breath, and no longer felt lost. Maybe I didn't believe in myself enough, but I believed in Elena. That day, I was the last model to walk the runway. While waiting by the stage, Elena held my hand the entire time. The closer we got to our turn, the more tightly she gripped my hand. "So, she also gets nervous. It's okay. Leave it to me." The words came out of my mouth, even surprising myself. My heart was pounding with anxiety, yet I still had the audacity to say such things. Elena turned to look at me, her grip relaxing. Just move forward boldly." She smiled at me. I stepped onto the runway in a dress adorned with countless three-dimensional roses. All eyes instantly focused on me. "Don't fall," I reminded myself. Even though it was a very short path, it felt longer than any journey I had walked in my life. In my heart, I called out Elena's name, and strength seemed to grow within me, each step more steady than the last. I reached the front and posed. The applause around me surged like a wave, the loudest and longest of the night. Cameras clicked and flashed incessantly in front of me. The lights and music intertwined, forming a dreamlike world of fashion. And here I was, right in the middle of it. Before stepping onto the stage, all I thought about was not letting Elena down. But now, it was more than that. A seed that had been buried deep in my heart was breaking through the earth and blooming. Chapter 08. After the fashion show ended, Elena was held back by someone. I heard it was a big name in the fashion industry, and I was genuinely happy for her. I walked out of the venue alone, feeling as if I were floating. "Lisa," a voice called my name. I turned my head and saw Alex standing not far away. Behind him was his black Mercedes, probably here to pick up Zoe. My heart trembled, and I felt my breath tighten a little. He took a few steps toward me, greeting me. "Long time no see." I put a bit of distance between us, adjusted my breathing, and replied politely, "Long time no see." Alex forced a somewhat awkward smile. "How have you been?" My mood gradually calmed, and I replied plainly, "Very well." There was an awkward silence. I was about to find an excuse to leave. Suddenly, he spoke again. "You look beautiful today." I froze for a moment, meeting his gaze. "I mean, the dress suits you well," he added, speaking sincerely and earnestly. I smiled. "Thank you for the compliment." Alex's gaze grew more intense, as if he wanted to say something more. Suddenly, a slap landed on my face, with full force. I staggered from the impact, turning to see Zoe glaring at me with a furious expression, flirting with someone else's boyfriend in public. "Don't you have any shame?" Alex hurried forward, grabbing her hand. "You misunderstood. We just ran into each other and chatted for a bit." Zoe shot me a sideways glance. "I think she's been plotting all along." Alex frowned and explained in a low voice, "I was the one who greeted Lisa first. It really has nothing to do with her." Zoe was relentless, mocking. "Lisa, I must say, you've really changed in just 1 year. Even Alex is standing up for you now. Did you learn your seduction skills from Elena?" Hearing her slander Elena like that, I was instantly furious. Before I could move to tear her apart, a sharp slap echoed through the air. Zoe's head turned to the side, and she covered her face, staring in disbelief at the woman in front of her. Elena had appeared from nowhere. She pointed at me, her face cold, and said, "Apologize to her." Alex pulled his startled girlfriend into his arms. "Today's events are my fault. I apologize to both of you." Zoe looked up at him, fuming. "Didn't you see me being bullied?" Alex soothed her gently. "Stop making a scene. You're not even defending me?" Zoe asked, her face filled with shock. Alex pursed his lips and said softly, "You really went too far just now." Zoe shoved him away, her beautiful eyes brimming with tears. "So much for saying you'd never let me be wronged. It was all lies." She glared at him, then turned and ran off without looking back. Alex gave us an apologetic glance and hurried after her. I watched their entangled figures, recalling the past. When I was with Alex, we never argued. My friends used to say that women like me lacked charm, and that I should express my emotions appropriately. Once, on my birthday, we made plans to watch a movie together. He showed up late, explaining that he lost track of time while playing basketball with his friends. I complained, "The movie's almost over." He said dismissively, "It's just a movie, isn't it? We can buy tickets again." I felt disappointed. "You didn't even care about our plans." He frowned, impatient. "I'm here, aren't I? What more do you want?" After arguing a few times, I ran off feeling wronged, turning back every few steps. He didn't come after me. That night, I sat alone on a bench at the bus stop, in the wind all night. No call, no message. In the end, I swallowed my pride and went to him to make peace. See, the line between love and indifference is so clear. I withdrew my gaze and linked my arm through Elena's. "Let's go too." Elena looked worried. "Are you okay?" I nodded. "If you're in a bad mood, don't pretend in front of me." "Really? I'm fine." I smiled. I'm no longer that foolish girl who tied all her emotions to Alex. On the way back to the hotel, Elena told me she had secured funding. I was genuinely happy for her, and my steps felt lighter as well. It was the same road as yesterday. One of the streetlights along the way was broken, but somehow, it didn't feel as dark. Chapter 09. My flower fairy look made it to the top of various media lists. A modeling agency approached me, wanting to sign a contract, but I refused. The Cinderella that amazes everyone is certainly dazzling, but I have a deeper longing for the fairy godmother, because she has the magic that makes others shine. Elena is going to France to further her career. I decided to follow in her footsteps and study fashion design there. When I resigned from my company, I nervously asked her, "Do you think my idea is unrealistic?" Instead of answering, she asked, "Is it just a whim?" I shook my head and said very seriously, "I've thought it through. In the past, my life revolved around Alex. Even my choice of accounting major in college was just because he mentioned wanting a reliable financial person in the future. This was the first time I made a decision following my own heart." Elena smiled brightly. "Then I'll be waiting for you in France, to fulfill this promise as soon as possible." I studied like crazy. More than half a year later, I was finally admitted to ESMOD International Fashion Design School in France. Before leaving, I returned to my old city. I heard Alex's mother was in the hospital. She had always been kind to me, and it felt right to go see her. I asked Sam to take me there when no one else was around. He said helplessly, "Is it really necessary to avoid Alex like this?" I explained, "I just want to avoid unnecessary misunderstandings and trouble." He looked at me with a complicated expression. "You don't need to worry about Zoe. They broke up." I was taken aback. "What happened?" Sam explained, "The moon is beautiful because of the distance. When you get too close, you'll see the scars and unevenness." He told me that after they got together, they often fought. Alex loved Zoe, so he was always the one to back down first. But Alex had grown up surrounded by admiration and was equally proud, unable to accommodate endlessly without limits. Over time, their conflicts kept accumulating. Not long ago, Zoe threw a tantrum again and shattered the jade bracelet Alex had given her. It was a family heirloom, meant for the future daughter-in-law. Alex's mother cherished it deeply, and the incident angered her so much that she ended up in the hospital with her already frail health. She never recovered. Alex was always filial, and he got really angry at Zoe. That's when they broke up. They were never really right for each other. Sam sighed, not wanting to discuss it further. I changed the subject. Did they manage to fix the bracelet? Sam said worriedly. Alex is looking everywhere right now. Unfortunately, he's asked many jade stores, but they all said it can't be fixed. I thought for a moment and said, maybe I can help. He squinted at me, giving me a teasing look. You still care about Alex the most. I shook my head in denial. I just want to make his mother feel better. Sam didn't say anything more. I reached out to a friend I knew from the study abroad agency. Her grandfather is an old craftsman who has been repairing jade for decades. I was lucky enough to meet him once, and I was amazed by his exquisite skills. I handed the repaired jade bracelet to Sam, asking him to pass it on to Alex. He frowned. Why make it so complicated? You could just meet with him directly. I lowered my lashes and said softly, there's no need. Sam looked at me and suddenly said, I still think you and Alex are the most suitable for each other. He paused, then continued, have you thought about reconciling? Actually, I shook my head, interrupting him. He doesn't love me, Anne. I smiled, feeling at peace. I don't love him anymore either. Upon hearing this, Sam's expression shifted slightly, his eyes looking past me. I turned around and saw Alex standing right behind us. He looked at me, his expression complicated. He opened his mouth but said nothing. I said goodbye to Sam and walked straight toward Alex, brushing past him. This time, I was going to pursue my own life. Chapter 10. After arriving in France, Elena and I rented a small townhouse with a garden. It was located between my school and her studio. Elena was clueless about household matters. The house was empty without furniture, and she was fine with just buying a mattress to sleep on the floor. I went to IKEA and brought back a lot of things. She always complained about how troublesome I was while silently helping me assemble everything. I also cleaned up the neglected garden and put up a swing set. When she had free time, Elena would sit on it, playing and singing Secret Garden on her guitar. She seemed to really like that song. She even named her personal brand after it. Looking at her, I always felt that life was as beautiful as a dream. In the second year of Elena's brand, she had her first big show. It was crucial to establish her reputation. Since starting school, I had been helping out in her studio, and this time, I was responsible for coordinating with the set designer. I heard the designer was specially invited by the brand's investor, a very mysterious figure. But I never imagined that person would be Alex. He was still just as handsome and charming as before, capable of captivating anyone at a glance. But today, my heart no longer skipped a beat for him. I stepped forward with confidence and greeted him. He nodded slightly, appearing more reserved than me. I didn't continue making small talk and quickly immersed myself in work. The communication process went smoothly, and we soon finalized the plan. Alex complimented. I didn't expect you to have such a deep understanding of architecture now. I responded calmly. Architecture and fashion have a lot in common. He stared at me for a long time, his dark eyes reflecting my face. You really have changed a lot. I smiled. Well, people have to grow. He invited me to dinner. I declined. As I left the studio, it started to rain. I didn't have an umbrella, and I got stuck at the entrance. Alex caught up to me and said, "Let me give you a ride back." We shared an umbrella, walking slowly toward the parking lot. He tilted the umbrella toward me, shielding me from the wind and rain. By the time we reached the car, his shoulders were already soaked. Old memories resurfaced in my mind. Once, when we were on a date, it suddenly started to rain. I had a playful idea and bought only one umbrella when we passed a convenience store. I wanted to stroll through the rain with him, stepping on puddles, but he held the umbrella and pulled me along quickly. By the time we got back to campus, half of me was soaked, shivering from the cold. He frowned and complained, "I told you we should have bought two." Chapter 11. I worked with Alex for 3 months. Elena's fashion show was a huge success. The garden stage designed by Alex added much charm to her early spring collection. After it ended, He said he wanted to wander around Paris and asked me to be his guide to express my gratitude. I didn't refuse. Paris is a romantic city, with street musicians playing along the sidewalks and the aroma of coffee wafting from open cafe doors. At night, along the Seine River, the lighthouse lit up, and someone was proposing with candles. Alex suddenly stopped, staring for a long time, a faint loneliness in his eyes. I thought he probably remembered Zoe again. "I've been looking for you for a long time," he suddenly said. I froze, looking at him in confusion. He turned to me and explained, "You helped me fix the jade bracelet, and I never thanked you. Later, when I went to find you, you were already gone." I waved my hand. "It was just a small favor. No need to mention it. It's not just that." He paused, his gaze deepening. "You've always done so much for me." I frowned, not responding. Alex's expression suddenly turned unusually serious. "Actually, I came here for you." After a pause, he spoke again. "Lisa, I regret it. Can we start over?" He looked at me with deep affection, like an ocean filled with love. If it were before, I probably would have drowned in it. But now, my heart didn't stir at all. I met his gaze and said calmly, "Alex, I don't want to be your second choice anymore." "It's not like that." He took a step forward, urgently explaining, "I'm not the same as I was before." I stepped back, smiling. "But I've changed too. I'm no longer willing to love you." Alex's shoulders slumped, and a hint of sadness surfaced in his eyes. He smiled bitterly. "I figured you wouldn't agree, but I still wanted you to know my feelings." He quickly gathered himself, raising his eyebrows slightly. "This time, I'm not giving up." I never expected Alex would seriously start pursuing me. He frequently flew to France, creating all sorts of surprises for me, no matter how I refused. He persisted. On my graduation day, he showed up as usual, with gifts and a large bouquet of sweetbriar flowers. When I was 12, on the day I was taken out of the orphanage, he was just like today, holding a stuffed animal for me in one arm and some sweetbriar flowers he'd picked from the roadside in the other. Back then, I ran joyfully toward the boy standing in the sunlight. But now, the many years that followed, each moment he turned away and ignored me, piled up bit by bit, like an insurmountable chasm between us. "I don't like sweetbriar flowers anymore." I stood in place, unable to take another step forward. His gaze darkened. "Then what do you like? I'll bring something different next time." "Alex, stop wasting your time on me. Not everything can be restarted." After saying that, I turned around and left without looking back. Elena was waiting for me not far away, and I quickly walked over to her. "Really not planning to give him a chance?" she asked. I nodded. She was silent for a moment before speaking again. "Is it that you don't want to fall in love, or that you don't want to be with him?" I paused, lowering my head. Elena looked at me gently. "If it's the latter, I respect your decision, but if it's the former, then I want to tell you that there are still many beautiful loves in this world worth experiencing. Don't shut happiness out because of one hurt." In the years since I separated from Alex, I did meet some good suitors, but I was timid and afraid, unwilling to open my heart again. Elena, somehow, always saw right through me. Sometimes I would think that if she were a man, we would definitely be able to love each other for a lifetime. I linked my arm through hers, playfully saying, "Why do I need to fall in love? Having a sister is enough." She gave me an exasperated look. "That won't do. If you don't get married, I will." I widened my eyes, intrigued. What kind of man could win over our gorgeous Elena? She smiled but didn't answer. Chapter 12. After graduation, I joined Elena's company and became a designer at Secret Garden. At that time, her brand was undergoing a new round of expansion. For the most crucial brand show, she invited me to collaborate with her. I was flattered, but as a rookie, I lacked confidence. She was just as certain as ever, saying, "I trust my own judgment." This collection was rose-themed. We worked day and night, letting roses bloom on every dress. Elena and I had a remarkably consistent vision. We hoped that every girl could live like a proudly independent rose, full of soft, graceful charm but also possessing the courage to face the thorns. The show was a tremendous success. The moment we stood on stage together, receiving flowers and applause, Elena said something to me, "Roses all the way." From then on, there would be flowers all along the way. What a beautiful phrase. Unfortunately, life is always cruel, catching people off guard. The day after the big show, Elena suddenly disappeared. She returned a month later, seemingly a different person, locking herself in her studio all day, drinking herself into oblivion. She looked so tormented, yet she refused to confide in anyone. Not long after, she attempted suicide. I found her in her studio, surrounded by empty bottles. She was curled up in a corner, motionless, as if she had stopped breathing. I rushed her to the hospital overnight. The doctor said she had swallowed an entire bottle of sleeping pills. Fortunately, she was treated in time and survived. After waking up, she remained silent. How could someone so beautiful and strong suddenly shatter without warning? I stayed by her side day after day, feeling helpless, until one day, a girl in the next bed happened to play the song Secret Garden. Elena suddenly broke down in tears. It was then that I learned Elena once had a lover, the man who composed the song Secret Garden. On the night our show succeeded, his plane crashed into the wilderness. The red-eye flight's destination was Paris, France. Was he coming to see Elena? That question would never be answered. Chapter 13. Elena dissolved the company and decided to travel alone. "Are you disappointed in me?" she asked. I bit my lip hard and shook my head. Elena had always been like a pillar of strength to me. I admired her, depended on her. Yet, I knew so little about her. I realized that I had no right to be disappointed. I was just very reluctant to let her go. "You will come back, right?" I asked softly. She didn't answer me, just smiled and said, "I have a gift for you." She led me to her room, where there was a beautiful wedding dress. It was unmistakably Elena's design. "Try it on and see if it fits." She slipped the wedding dress on me and, looking at my reflection in the mirror, softly said, "I hope you find happiness soon." I could no longer hold back and let the tears fall. We gave up the small townhouse we had rented together. As I watched the traces of our lives being cleaned away bit by bit, my heart also felt emptier and emptier. When Elena left, she took only a small amount of luggage and her guitar. I asked her, "Where are you going next?" She answered nonchalantly, "I don't know." Elena said that she had been without parents since she was young, a person without a home, suited to wandering. I watched her turn away, walking with such determination, and suddenly felt very afraid. It was as if I didn't do something, she would disappear from the world again. "Will you come back when I wear the wedding dress?" I shouted after her. She paused, but never looked back. I caught up with her, standing in front of her. "You will come back to bless me, won't you?" Elena's gaze was dull. I held her shoulders tightly, repeating my question again and again. In the end, my tone was almost pleading. She finally nodded and promised, "All right." I am a very selfish person. Knowing it might bring her pain, I still used the sly promise to keep her close. Chapter 14. After Elena left, I started having trouble sleeping. I would wake up in the middle of the night, staring at unfamiliar walls, and loneliness would wrap around me like a cocoon. This suffocating feeling was no less painful than a breakup. One day, I found myself unconsciously walking back to the old townhouse, seeing an agent showing it to potential clients. Suddenly, my heart ached. I turned and hurried away, but a familiar voice called out to me, "Lisa." Alex quickly caught up to me, pulling me into his arms, his voice hoarse. "Where have you been these days? I've been so worried about you." The cold December wind cut through to the bone, making me want to hold on to a little warmth. I lifted my hand and slowly put it down, ultimately not pushing him away. Alex held me tighter and said softly, "Lisa, come back home with me. I'm not comfortable with you being here alone." I was exhausted, both physically and mentally, my mind hazy, almost ready to nod and agree. The sharp ringtone of his phone suddenly interrupted. Alex glanced at the screen, frowning slightly before rejecting the call. Just as he was about to speak, the phone started ringing frantically again. Answer it. It might be something important, I said with a faint smile. He gave me an apologetic look, walking a long distance away before answering the call. The agent came out of the house with the client. They hadn't made a deal. Can I take a look inside? I asked in French. The agent eagerly led me in. The furnishings inside were still the same. Elena and I had spent over 3 beautiful years here. Sometimes I would blame her. She was so close, yet she never shared her pain with me. But just now, I think I suddenly understood. It wasn't that she didn't want to. Perhaps she just couldn't. I always thought that having dreams and a career meant I was a mature adult. But in reality, my spiritual world had never truly blossomed into a proudly independent rose. I had been living brightly by borrowing Elena's light. Now that she was gone, I had withered. If only I had understood sooner. I walked outside, looking at the swing in the garden, murmuring to myself. Alex returned after his call, seeing me standing there in a daze, and gently knocked on my head. If you like it, I can put an identical one at home. I shook my head. No need. No one would sit on it and sing while playing the guitar anymore. I'm not planning to go back home with you, I added. He walked over and took my hand, asking, why? I pulled away and asked back. Was that Zoe on the phone just now? His body tensed instantly, his voice nervous. She's in some trouble and asked me for help. If it bothers you, I'll delete her contact right away. I raised my eyes slightly and said indifferently, I don't mind. He froze. Alex, I really don't love you anymore, I said. His eyes reddened. But just now, you clearly. That was only because I was too weak and wanted someone to accompany me, I said coldly. Even if it wasn't you, I wouldn't have pushed them away. Alex trembled, stubbornly saying, I don't believe you. It's not that you don't believe. You just don't want to accept it. I looked into Alex's eyes, suddenly smiling. We're both adults now. Instead of clinging painfully, let's part with dignity. He looked at me for a long time in silence. I was the first to turn and leave. Chapter 15. I found a job as a designer in Paris and rented our old townhouse again. I began to get used to solitude, and I learned to open my heart, ready to accept new people stepping into my life. In the first year after Elena left, my disordered life slowly returned to normal. The next time I heard about Alex was when news of his marriage to Zoe went viral. The talented architect created a rose garden just to make his beloved smile. In spring, pale pink flowers covered the entire courtyard. They held a grand wedding there. For a time, their story became a romantic tale. But some observant netizens noticed. Miss Zoe always loved roses, so why would she spend her life surrounded by sweetbriar instead? That question remained unanswered, soon drowned out by other gossip. I had no time to guess Alex's thoughts either. I only hoped we would both be well. Chapter 16. The second year after Elena left, I met Roma. She had divorced Hudson. The man who once loved her so much fell in love with someone else after achieving success. Roma acted strong, but I was worried she'd disappear from my sight like Elena once did. I stayed by her side, not daring to let my guard down for a moment. One day she asked me, Hudson said he would make me happy. Why didn't he keep his word? I thought for a moment and honestly replied, in this world, only you will never betray yourself. Instead of pinning happiness on someone else, why not fight for it yourself? She leaned on my shoulder and praised me for being mature. Elena, how I wish you could hear that. I'm no longer the insecure, timid crybaby I used to be. I've become someone others can lean on. Roma bought a winery and decided to settle in Paris. I also quit my job and started preparing to open my own bridal design studio. On the opening day, I received a large bouquet of roses. The card only had best wishes, no signature. I chased after the person, and from a distance, I saw Alex's silhouette. He had lost a lot of weight, walking alone in the wind, looking somewhat desolate. At that time, I had already heard about what happened between him and Zoe from Roma. After returning home, Zoe arranged to meet with Alex, drugged him when he was drunk, and later used her pregnancy to force him to marry her. But their married life was chaotic, full of absurdities, and even became a joke among acquaintances. I watched as Alex's silhouette disappeared at the end of the road, then turned and gave the roses to a beggar. I didn't call out to him, and he didn't look back. Chapter 17. The third year after Elena left, my bridal brand gradually got on track. On my 30th birthday, I would have my first solo fashion show. Roma always sighed, saying I was successful in my career but unlucky in love. Over the years, I've had new relationships, but each ended in failure. Perfect love is a luxury, not something everyone can have. I decided to wear the wedding dress Elena gave me on the day of my show, because I felt that was the happiest moment of my life. Fulfilling the promise in this way is indeed a bit sneaky. But Elena, I really miss you. Will you show up that day? Until today, I still haven't met a soulmate, but I'm not afraid. What I'm truly afraid of is never being able to see you again. You said you were a person without a home. I bought the old townhouse we used to live in, and in the garden, there are not only roses but also the violets you loved. The table, chairs, swing, everything is still in its original place. Could this be your home? Elena, when will you come back home? I'm still waiting for you.